Perfect. Now then, I need to tell you about what's been happening with the Mini. I'm going to start telling you all about what's happened so far, and at the end I'll give you a rundown on what my next steps are. Because if you don't follow my Instagram or my TikTok, you probably won't know what's been happening. So I'll get straight into it and we'll see what's been going on. Several weeks ago, I can't remember the date, I'll look it up. The last time I put up a video on the Mini, it finished with me going for a little drive. We went up the road, back down again, back onto the drive, fully assembled without the front end. So from there, what I needed to do was strip it all back down, take the engine back out, the subframe off the car. I needed to replace a few of the fixings, finish welding up the subframe, paint the subframe, finish making the brace bars, paint them all and reassemble everything back into the car. So that went pretty well. Got it all stripped down, got everything out of the car, finished welding up the subframe, a couple of slight changes here and there, replaced the fixings that I needed to replace, then started reassembling it, and I've got the subframe all reassembled back into the car permanently, all new fixings, suspension all reassembled. I fitted some adjustable gas shock absorbers, some lowered ones, because I was on sort of a standard KYB shock absorber before. The shocks are fitted, in actual fact, came from Cole from Classic Mini DIY. They were his old ones prior to his Protec installation. Anyway, got the subframe all bolted back in the car. I've got a nice little aluminium fuel filter mount, got that fitted. Got the brace bars all done, got the engine refitted into the car, all the wiring all done. Got an intake pipe on with an air filter on, wired in all the headlights, bolted the front end on, and started up and ran. I replaced the exhaust manifold flange because the one I'd used wasn't very good, and I managed to get a nice thick stainless steel one that was a lot better than what I had used. So I took the exhaust manifold off, cut the whole flange off and re-welded the manifold to the new flange so it was stainless tube, stainless flange, and I welded it with stainless wire. So previously I'd used a mild steel flange and stainless tube, stainless wire, so it wasn't very good. But this time, brilliant, bolted it on, no leaks, spot on. So that was the car all up and running. So the first drive I went just round the estate, I had a drive shaft pop out. One of the circlips on the end of the drive shaft that hadn't quite clicked in when I pushed the shaft into the RCV joint, so I had to redo that. Next, I started to get a little bit braver. I took it off the estate just into the village and back. I have told the insurance company that it's got an engine swap, but it was smoking a fair bit, so I just kept it sort of local. The journeys, it was smoking a lot once I first started it up and it was on idle. Then I'd go and drive the car and I could drive it wherever I like and it wasn't smoking. If I stopped at a junction and then pulled away again, it smoked. I've just been and done about 5 miles down country lanes and then 3 or 4 miles back up the A38. The cooling fan's cut in, hopefully cooling it down, but it seems to be smoking less. It's a little bit more blue now, I think. It's still that. But driving along, it seems fine. It's just then when you stop and start going again, it starts smoking a bit. Still stinks of petrol. Or if I was slowing down a big hill, you'd get smoke. So all these symptoms started pointing me towards potential valve stem seal failure, which was a little bit unusual because the engine had since it had been in the Zafira, when it was in the Zafira, it didn't have leaking valve stem seals. It didn't smoke, it ran beautifully, and it was running really nicely in the Mini. It was running well, but it was just this smoke issue. So I started doing a little bit of work on it, trying to nail down what the smoke could be. So This was the week leading up to Himley Hall mini show, and I was desperate to get the car to the show. I'd shared pictures on Facebook with the British Mini Club to say this car will be there, and I was starting to run out of time. So I came to the Wednesday evening before the show on the Sunday, and I went to Halfords and bought a can of that Wins stop smoke stuff. I think it's designed to swell seals or do things like that to help valve stem seal issues. So I drove to Halfords, put a can of that in, and it was quite smoky on the way to Halfords. So I put a can of that in. I'd taken it to work that day. I'd driven to 15 miles each way to work and back. Whilst driving along, it was fine. But if I was particularly on the way home from work, if I was sat at traffic lights and then pulled away, it was quite embarrassing the amount of smoke it was leaving behind. So I've got a couple of ideas floating around in my mind what it could be. So I got this can of stuff, poured it into the engine at Halfords, and then went for a drive for about 3 or 4 miles. And I stopped after about 3 or 4 miles and let it idle and revved it up, and the smoke was all gone. You're not going to believe this. Check this out. The smoke has gone. So I was quite convinced. I sent a little video to my friends. I thought, brilliant, must be valve stem seals, because that's what this stuff's designed to do, designed to seal up stem seals and the like. So I headed back home, and this was Wednesday night. I decided that the next plan of action is to get the cylinder head off and change the valve stem seals. So I started that evening, stripping the engine down, getting the cylinder head off. And then Thursday, I was able to phone up a Motor Factors locally and order a head gasket set. So I did. They couldn't get it in till Friday, so I got it all stripped down. Thursday night, I spent the evening cleaning everything up, so it was all ready to reassemble. Getting all the valves out of the cylinder head, get it all laid out on the bench, all nice and neat. So then Friday, on my way home from work, I could call in and pick up the head gasket set, which I did, no problem. Got the head gasket set, came back home. I planned at that time to reuse the timing belt because I didn't want to throw an excessive amount of money at the engine just in case it was terminal. So I came home with my new gasket set, reassembled the cylinder head, new valve stem seals, lots of oil, making sure everything's nicely lubricated, gave it a thorough inspection, checked all the valve guides out, etc. Reassembled it Friday night, got it back on the car. Saturday morning, fill it up with coolant, turn the key and see what happens. And unfortunately, it did exactly the same thing. Now, I skipped a part. What I noticed on Wednesday evening when I was having a look, I'd taken the spark plugs out and found that number 4 cylinder, there was quite a lot of oil. You could see I used a bore scope to look down into the cylinder, and there was quite a lot of oil on top of the piston in cylinder 4. Number 1, there was a little bit, 2 and 3 were fine, but number 4, that was a bit of a mess. So I was a little bit disappointed. When I got the cylinder head off on the Wednesday evening into Thursday, I found a few small pitting marks in the top of the piston and the bottom of the cylinder head in number 4, and some slight marks in the cylinder bore. So I kind of had my fingers crossed when I came to the conclusion that I was changing the stem seals. So I went for it anyway. But then once I fired it up Saturday morning, it was smoking exactly the same as it was a few days earlier. So this isn't looking good. On reflection, I think those little pitted marks on the at this point, I thought the little pitting marks on the piston and on the underside of the cylinder head, ever so tiny, they must have been caused by some welding spatter that got in there and obviously caused greater damage. So I kind of left it at that, and I had to take my R50 to the show. And I was starting to get a bit, I don't know, a little bit disappointed with it, a little bit fed up. I'm sending videos to my friends and uploading little clips to TikTok and all sorts of ideas coming through my head, and I ultimately came to the conclusion that Saturday I tried to find another engine. So I thought if I could swap another engine in, I could still get it to the show. Didn't happen, couldn't find one. So I thought this engine's going to be scrapped. I'm just going to have to go and buy another complete engine, which I thought at the time when I took this engine out of the Zafira, and we scrapped the Zafira. These old shaped Zafira A's, Astras up to 2005, Vectras around the same age. They're everywhere with this 1.6 litre engine. They are. But over the last 12 months or 18 months since I took the engine out of the car and scrapped the car, the used car market's gone berserk. And that's had an impact on these engines. They're no longer 100 quid or 150 quid available everywhere anymore. They're 250, 300 quid, these engines, which is, for second-hand engines, are a tricky one. I don't mind paying 150 quid for one because I don't mind taking a chance for that much money. I'm not taking a chance for 300 quid because every advert you see for a second-hand engine for sale, it's done 70,000 miles or 80,000 miles. The complete cars are all 150, 100 plus thousand miles. So I've got very little faith in used engines, and you only have to go and look at a video from Mighty Car Mods a little while back where they were putting an engine in their Suzuki Jimny, and they found that the engine they got was scrap. And that's the risk. That's what I don't want to go and chuck a load of money into another engine and find it's going to be scrap. So what I did from there was decided I would do a little bit more investigation into this engine that I've got and see what I can do with it. So I took the cylinder head off again, couldn't see anything different. So I stripped the block and I got the piston and rod out of number 4 out of it, and I found some very, very slight marks in the oil control ring, and a little bit of something material, a little bit of metal that looked like it had gone down the side of the piston and wedged itself in the top of the piston, and there was a few little marks in the cylinder bore. So I thought, well, at least I can see something now. It's kind of the first time I've actually seen something that's not right. So what I then was left with the decision: do I send the block away for a rebore and buy oversized pistons and rebuild it that way, or what do I do? So I thought the first thing I can do, number 4, is to run a hone up and down the bore. So I've honed cylinder 4 and it's cleaned up the majority of the marks. It looks fantastic. The only marks that are left don't come so far down the piston as the oil control ring. So what I've decided I'm going to do is I'm going to hone all the other bores, buy a new set of piston rings, new set of big end and main bearing bolts, an oil pump gasket and 2 oil pump seals and a rear main crank seal, and I'm going to reassemble this engine. I'm going to take the cylinder head, strip it completely and send it away for skimming this time, and I'm going to thoroughly clean all the valves, all the inlet and exhaust ports, and make sure the cylinder head's 100% spot on. I'll show you the bores after this, but the bores in each cylinder, I've honed number 4 so far and that looks great, but the others 1, 2 and 3, they're really, really quite glazed, and I think I may have caused a problem there myself. Because so if you look in each cylinder, that's number 1, 2, 3 and 4. I put a hone down number 4 and you can see how it looks much better. There's still, let me have a look round, that little mark there, but that doesn't go down as far as the oil control ring, and then there's another one somewhere around this side that's the same. Now you can see in each of these they're incredibly well glazed, aren't they? So what I'm thinking about doing at the moment is honing the others like this one, because that one, now it's honed, looks lovely. There's no indication of wear. So I'm going to do that to all 4, that's why I've took the crank out. And then buy a new set of rings and rebuild it, have the head skimmed and do everything like legit properly. Because I think I don't think there's any real reason why that bore should cause a problem, unless it's a combination of a few small marks, damaged rings and a mirror-like glazed finish. So yeah, I think I might just give it another go, because another 100 quid's worth of parts, I can have this engine back together and hopefully good. Whereas another engine's 250, 300 quid at the minute, they seem to be quite valuable. The fuel system I'm running has never quite been right as it should be on the car, so ready for reassembly. I've got some fuel system upgrades to give the correct fuel pressure and make the fuel system run correctly. What I had done as well a lot of the time through the build is to run the engine a little bit and run it a little bit and not let it run fully. So what I'm going to do next is hone all the bores, get the cylinder head sorted and reassemble the engine. I think I've got a little bit of time before I can get to do that bit, because I've got to spend a load of money on it, and we're doing a bit of work to the house, and I've spent a little bit of money on my Volvo just lately because the fuel pump failed. So that's the update on the Mini. That's where it's at. I'll show you some clips at the end of the bores and what I've been talking about, and hopefully I've showed you some bits all the way through this of what I've been talking about, and you can see exactly what's been happening. So for 3 days I had great fun driving it around. It was really fast. The drive shafts were great, everything. I got to sort of dual carriageway speed, 70 miles an hour. It was a fun car to drive for 3 days before I took it all apart again. But hopefully before the end of the summer I can have it all built back up again and be out and about in it again. I think I've just found my problem. I've got a camera in the bore. That looks like a score to me, doesn't it? I think I may have accidentally let some metal get into the engine while it was in the garage and I was doing grinding and welding and stuff. That is not good. Rats. I need to find an engine. Just a side note, I found the mark that I'd picked up on camera and it's here. But as you can see, it's only just tipping into where the rings go, so I'm not really concerned about that, and it only goes down really that far. You can't feel it there just, but not really any further. It's definitely not a crack, it is just a mark.